Hi, I'm Alex Reeves and welcome to my studio at the Drum Fortress. This is where I've recorded for artists like Nas, Uncle, Nick Cave, Bobby Womack and a host of songwriters and producers. My studio enables me to do high quality recordings of drums and percussion so that anyone can use them on their tracks. I want to show you how you can do this kind of thing yourself. In this series of videos for iDrum magazine, I will be taking you through the playing, recording techniques, equipment and mixing that I use in my own studio. First though, here's a little taster. What you heard there was played by the same drummer on the same drum kit, recorded by the same mics, through the same preamps and into the same computer. The only things that changed are the effects, the processing and the mic choice after it had all been recorded. To get these sounds you need the following in order of importance. Number 1, a good drummer. Number 2, good sounding drums. Number 3, good mics in a good room. Number 4, good preamps, outboard gear and an audio converter. And number 5, an effective way of listening to your music. Let's have a little look around the kit to see what I've been using. Okay, so the first thing that you need is a good drummer. I'm going to leave that up to you. Watch the other iDrum Mag tuition pages, get yourself a good teacher, play music, practice, do what you need to do to make yourself the best player that you can possibly be. We also need good sounding drums. That is not to say that you'll need the most expensive drums, it's just the best ones to your own ears. Make sure that you trust your ears when you're getting new equipment, when you're buying stuff. There's no use in getting the shiniest gear for the studio if it doesn't sound any good. Another great thing that you need is variety. I've got lots of snare drums, lots of cymbals, several different types of drum kit. If you can't afford variety, go for versatility. Try and change the sound of the snare. Buy the most versatile snare drum that you possibly can. Have a variety of heads. Use moon gel or whatever dampening that you want on the heads so that you can get different sounds. Learn how to tune them. All of those kind of things really help. Also, find the best place in the room for your drum kit to sit. It can make a lot of difference just moving a bass drum or a snare drum over a few feet so that you can get a bit more bass or a bit more presence in the drum sound. I'm going to go through the drums that I've got here. I'm using a Sonor SQ2 drum kit. It's all maple, apart from on the inside of the toms and the bass drum, there's a layer of Bubinga, which I think adds a bit more warmth and bottom end to the whole thing. I'll start on the snare drum here. It's a custom-made SQ2 snare drum, again made out of maple with a layer of Bubinga inside. It's 13 by 6 inches and it sounds incredible, and it's one of the most versatile snare drums that I own. Going slightly further over to one of the most recorded snare drums is the 1960s Ludwig Superphonic. Most studio drummers will have one of these in their collection somewhere. It's a very useful drum. The toms, I am using Aquarian heads, texture coated on all 3 toms in this on this kit. On the bottom is a thin head as well, so it sounds open and I get a lot of versatility from different tunings and from different dampenings as well. I'm using Sabian cymbals all around the kit. Again, I changed according to what song and according to what style. In this case, I've got a Volt Series Artisan ride cymbal, which is my favourite ride cymbal. It's a 22-inch light ride, and in this case, I've got a little sizzle on there, which sounds really nice. It's actually a sync chain that I got from B&Q or somewhere like that. I really enjoy the Evolution series, the HXX in this case. I've got a broken one here, and I've also got a very old set of 1950s or possibly 1960s hats, which sound really nice. On top of which I have a random tambourine that I made. There's all sorts of other things like this. These little hi-hats are useful for all sorts of things. They sound great. So yeah. Lots of variety and versatility there. In front of the bass drum, in this case, for the previous recording that you just heard, I'm using an old calfskin single-headed bass drum, which I found, I actually bought it off a guy in a pub in Kilburn for about 30 quid. It sounds amazing. It sounds great sticking it in front of the kit because you get an extra bit of boom and warmth. On top of that, it sounds great just using it as a bass drum or a marching drum on its own. Number 3, you need some good microphones. Microphones are like the ears in a studio. If your microphones pick up the drums in the right way, hopefully once you get it into the computer, you'll hear the drums in the right way. I'll show you what I'm using. On the bass drum, I've got 2 mics in this particular instance. Inside the bass drum, I've got an AKG D112. It's a pretty standard bass drum mic. It's not expensive either, and it sounds really good. It generally sounds exactly how you want a bass drum to sound. In this case, I've got it right inside the bass drum to pick up the toppy, clicky sound of the bass drum. To augment that, I've got on the outside of the bass drum an AKG 414. This is a large diaphragm condenser mic, and it's quite a versatile microphone. It's got several different settings that will slightly change the sound. In this case, I've got it directly in front of the bass drum woofer with a small decibel reduction to stop it from overpowering itself. So let's move to the snare drum. Again, I've got 2 mics on the snare. On the top, I'm using a small diaphragm condenser mic. There's all sorts of mics that you can use. The most popular is the Shure SM57, which I do use and I will be using in the next lesson. On this one, however, I have a Beyerdynamic Opus 87, which is typically a live vocal mic or a vocal mic in the studio. However, I think it sounds amazing on the snare drum, so I've been using it on that. To augment that, underneath the snare, or in my case, pointing at the shell, the side of the snare, I'm using a Shure Beta 58, which sounds, again, to augment the actual snare drum itself from the top microphone. It will add the frequencies that you might not necessarily have. If we move to the toms, in this case, I'm using on all 3 of my toms the Shure SM57. Other popular mics are Sennheiser 421s, which sound really good. It's a dynamic mic. It picks up exactly the frequencies that you need for a tom to sound good on your recordings. If we can move to the overheads, I have, in this case, I actually have 4 overheads on the kit. This is for versatility. They're permanently set up so that I don't have to think about what type of mic setup that I need to use for each different recording. The first set, which is the most likely that you'll use, is a stereo pair of large diaphragm condenser mics. You could also use small diaphragm condenser mics to pick up the spots of the cymbals. In this case, I'm using these because they give a nice room sound. It's quite open. These mics are Audio-Technica 4033s, a matched pair, so they sound quite similar to each other. Right above the kit is my favourite microphone, the one that gives me the most solid sound on the kit and the one that I'll always start with, and that is an old BBC Coles 4038. It's quite a classic microphone for recording overheads on drums. It's a ribbon microphone, which means it picks up the sound in a slightly different way to the condenser mics and the dynamic mics. It suits what I need it for perfectly. The last microphone that I'm using on the kit is on this side of the kit. I'm actually using a cheaper ribbon mic. It's actually less than 100 quid, this thing, but it sounds really good, and it picks up all of the kind of bass end of my toms and gives a nice kind of smooth, rounded sound if I ever need to use it. Also, I have a room microphone, another Coles 4038. Okay, so now we've moved from the drum kit over to where all my outboard gear is. So number 4, you need good preamps, good outboard gear, and good audio conversion. Here I've got several different preamps which the mics are plugged into. For the purposes of now, I'm going to show you what I've got, but I'll also give you some advice on what you could buy and how you could do this. The first thing that I use is a strip of API 312s. There's 4 of these, so I'm using the first one here, I'm using on the bass drum. The second one I'm using on the snare drum, and then right now, for the purposes of this recording, I've got the 2 overheads going through the last 2 of the APIs. They have a certain sound and character to preamps. Like all preamps will add something to the sound. It might be good, it might be bad. You've got to choose. You've got to look at the forums and use your ears to decide what you want to buy. The second thing I'm using is a strip of DAV preamps. Again, for the purposes of this recording, I'm using the ribbon mics through here. So I've got the Coles 4038 going through the first channel of the DAVs, and the room mic Coles 4038 going through the second of the DAV channels. I've also got a Focusrite Trackmaster here. It's pretty good. I'm using it for the 414 that's outside the bass drum, mainly because it allows me to add a bit of EQ to the setting on the way in. What I mean by that is I can take some of the frequencies out and add some more frequencies so that when the actual recording is happening, it records with those frequencies in or out. On top of this, I've also got a stereo compressor. I'm actually not using it for this recording, but sometimes I'll use it on the overheads, or sometimes I use it on the bass drum and snare drum. A compressor will essentially limit the audio range that you can get from a microphone. So it will make the louder stuff quieter, and it will make the quieter stuff louder, or it can do those things if you want them to do that. Other preamps I'm using are this little tube thing by a company called Art. I'm using one of the other ribbon mics through this. It sounds quite nice. It's pretty cheap, so it's very easily affordable for you, but it still sounds pretty good. I'm also using the preamps on the front of my Motu. The Motu itself is the audio converter. This is what converts the microphone signal, the analog, into a digital signal that the computer can understand and read, and then it will convert it back again to audio so that you can listen to it out of your speakers. It's a very important part of the recording process, and will probably, although very expensive, make quite a lot of difference to the quality of your recordings. I'm also using a Mackie desk. For now, I'm just using it for monitoring purposes, so I can hear everything in the right way. So I've got signal from the Motu 828 going into the Mackie desk, and then I can change that and alter it according to how I like my headphones to be while I'm actually playing this. You could also use this to replace all of my preamps here. So the API, the DAV, the Focusrite, this little art thing here, the front of these, all of which can be coped with by using something like a Mackie desk or another type of desk, as long as they've got preamps in so that you can power the microphones. This might well be, and this, the 828, might well be all that you need to do to start off recording. You'll also need to record onto something. Either you use tape or, like most studios now, you use a computer. I'm using a Mac, onto which I have put Logic Pro, which allows me to record all the microphones into the computer at all times. I can then process following that so that I can make the drums sound like I want them to. Okay, number 5, we need to be able to hear what we've recorded. We need to be able to hear the music that we actually were involved in playing. In this case, I'm using a set of Focal Solo 6s. To augment that, I'm also using a smaller monitor, a little mono Avatone monitor, which gives me a different reference for the mixes that I do. And on top of that, you also need to be able to hear it in the way that people listen to music pretty much all the time now, and that is through these. Well, iDrum, thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at recording with a minimal mic setup. Any questions, please contact me via my website or on my Facebook page, Alex Reeves Drums.